Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I am Stephen Willis, alongside today Tom Vanderford, because he wasn't going to get the week off. We were always going to have him in his normal evening slot. But this week, Tom, we get to react to Ole Miss winning the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State 17-7. And there's some storylines that happened, but the bottom line is 10-win regular season for the second time in 3 years, and they're going to go for a school record in victories of a season in the bowl game. How you doing, Tommy?
I'm doing great, man.
I
At the beginning of the year, I think I remember saying our ceiling would be 10-2. So, I'm pretty proud we hit that.
Yeah. Be careful about patting yourself on the back.
Oh, okay.
Actually, no, it's pretty good. I picked, believe it or not, I do need to apologize to all of Rebel Nation because my picks in July when we did W's and L's, I went with 9-3. I picked 9-3. I underestimated this football team, and this Ole Miss team has a chance to win 11 games in a bowl game, and everybody should be excited about that. Now, I've heard some things that Jaxson Dart was probably more injured than was let on, and maybe Chris Lowe was closer to telling the truth whenever his report came out than the actual everybody's assumption, because Jaxson just said, I'm good, I'm fine. That's been his pretty much canned answer throughout all of this. Apparently, Jackson's shoulder has been a little bit of an issue, and the rumor is it might require surgery, and they're probably trying to figure out when it's going to be done. It's non-throwing shoulder, but it's a situation. Does Jaxson Dart want to go to the Citrus Bowl or the NY6 and risk having a surgery potentially to where he can't be hit yet for the bowl game? It's not 100% right. Or does he have the surgery and wait until right after the bowl game or something like that, if that is necessary? But I think after what we saw him handing the ball off with the wrong hand intentionally because he couldn't move his arm up against Louisiana Monroe, against Mississippi State, he just got absolutely hammered on the ground, but just completely kept playing. I'm telling you, Tom, Jaxson Dart is the toughest quarterback I remember at Ole Miss since Tom Luke. And Tom Luke, if everybody remembers, was an option quarterback that Ole Miss had, and he was about 6 foot, 180 pounds, soaking wet, ran the option, ended up, it seemed like every third game he was out with a concussion by the end. Just an amazingly tough person, and apparently one of the reasons that some of these transfers realized what was going to happen is apparently Tom Luke just broke down in a meeting talking about the Egg Bowl and how much this means to him. And the Luke family and the Egg Bowl meaning a lot is, that's kind of a no-duh type situation. But Jaxson Dart, I compare him favorably with Tom Luke, and I mean that in the nicest possible complimentary way to both quarterbacks.
Oh, I completely agree. I can remember watching Tom Luke and thinking he was played more like a linebacker than a quarterback. And I enjoyed at the end of the game last night, and believe it or not, I've got it up here in the man cave. I'm in the middle of watching it again. It just keeps getting better every time. But there at the end where he lowered his shoulder and knocked that state player back about 3 or 4 yards and got up and got in his face, I was like, yeah, he reminded me of Tom Luke there. I can remember watching Tom and thinking, gosh, if we could get a quarterback that could throw and run this good, we'd be pretty good. And we've got him. Mm-hmm. He's a tough kid, and I really like him. I honestly think also, like you do, that he was hurting pretty bad last night, and he just kept going. He just kept going, kept shrugging it off. He even said this: he loves the game of football. He wanted to play last night, so you got to appreciate that.
Yeah, and you're going to have hardcore people in the fan base that's going to say that essentially that Spencer Sanders should have been playing quarterback, or Jaxson Dart, if he was injured, should not have been out there. But the problem is you're not going to keep Jaxson Dart off the field. And Lane Kiffin's not going to stop his quarterback from if he wants to play, from going out there. We saw that with Matt Corral in 2020 in the 6 interception game. He's going to keep sending him out there. So don't expect them to put in there. It's going to be up to Jaxson to know if he can or he can't. And the reality of the situation is Ole Miss beat Louisiana Monroe. They beat Mississippi State, so they obviously could. So any decision of Jaxson Dart playing didn't exactly hurt the team. The only thing it probably did was mean that Ole Miss couldn't win a straight-up beauty contest with Missouri. Ole Miss needs some help.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully Missouri will take care, Arkansas will take care of business. But, I'm be happy if we end up going to the Citrus. I know you are.
Oh, yeah. I am rooting for that. Unbelievably rooting for that, and we'll see if it happens. Like I said, if Ole Miss gets the Cotton Bowl against Texas, I'm all for that as well. If they go to the Peach Bowl, I'm all for that as well. Just Ole Miss fans should be prepared. Probably the best situation for coverage of football for Ole Miss fans is the Citrus Bowl, because everybody's going to come down here for a week for the Citrus Bowl, cover the game, and then immediately go over for 3 or 4 days to the Under Armour All-American game where there's 3 or 4 players in it that is Ole Miss interest players as well. So it could be pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to be pretty neat. I think it looks like possibly that if we are in the Citrus Bowl, which I don't think we've ever been in, but if we're in the Citrus Bowl, looks like we'll probably be playing Iowa. I just got through watching them. They're oh goodness, it's like Novocaine, man. But it's not even Novocaine. It's like
it's like watching Hayden Fry's offense from 1982.
Yeah, it's a non-existent offense and a pretty good defense. So it would be interesting. An interesting matchup. I think we would match up well with them. And I'm so proud of the kids. They did good this year. I think they did really good. I think the staff did well. I'm not going to lie, like a lot of you folks watching, I'm sure I got a little irritated with Charlie Weiss Jr. last night, but when you look at it, I've been watching it again, and I've been watching Dart, and I think they did the best they could for the offensive line that they had and the quarterback situation that they had. I think they were trying to protect Dart. He didn't throw a lot of deep balls. I think he only threw like 1 or 2 deep balls the whole game, and they were off. So, even though I was cussing the guy last night, I can kind of see maybe why they had the game plan they had. Now, hats off to the defense. The defense, excuse me, played lights out. Of course, they were
4 yards from holding their 6th team under 300 yards for the game.
Yep. Yeah. And, we said at the beginning of the year, if we could just get a top 30 defense, we would be pretty good. And we've got a good defense. I really think so. And I love the way Golding is recruiting. I love the way he's coaching. And I think our defense will get better and better. And I think that's part of the reason why we had the offensive game plan we had last night, was because Lane Kiffin, for the first time he's been at Ole Miss in these 4 years, had confidence in his defensive staff and his defense.
There's a lot to be said for that, Tom. There really is. And you have a situation where, like I said, Jaxson Dart was more injured than we knew.
Right.
Both offensive tackles or 2 offensive tackles got hurt. There was movement around there. And State's linebackers, they was like leading the SEC in sacks or something like that in tackles. Really good players in the front 7 as well. Ole Miss ended up with the advantage of Quinshon Judkins. He is an advantage in that game. But if you just look at it, he looked at the defense and said, Mississippi State can't score against us. If we can score 10 points, we're going to win this football game.
Right.
And they called the game that. They did exactly, honestly, if you think about it, if you listen to my videos during the course of the week, every possession ended with a kick.
Yep.
There was no artificial motivation that was given. I think they went for it one time. And when you look at that, yeah, I don't know how much more we can ask for. I mean, we could ask for style points and things like that. We could ask for 2008 reincarnated. But at the end of the day, Ole Miss won the Egg Bowl. Ole Miss has won 3 out of 4 Egg Bowls. They've run 4 out of 5 Egg Bowls in Starkville. And I think everybody should be happy as that. Oh, by the way, the Missouri versus Arkansas game, as we're recording this, it's on right now. It's a color game, by the way.
Good. I tell you, I put on Facebook and Twitter today. I said, yeah, just for today, I'm a Hog fan. Woo Pig Suey.
Yeah, what is it, Spirit Fingers or whatever? Yeah.
Woo Pig, whatever it takes.
Yeah, and I'm a Kentucky Wildcats fan, too, against Louisville, because Louisville probably needs to lose that game, and then Louisville needs to beat Florida State.
Oh, yeah.
If that happens, neither one of them is only one of them is going to get into an Access Bowl because the ACC champion isn't going to the playoffs as well. You know, this Egg Bowl streak, 3 out of 4 for Lane, and honestly, Ole Miss had the better team in that game. Oh, yeah. It was one of those games, and everybody that you hear, listen, Tom. One thing that drives me crazy is you come into any take about Ole Miss sports, okay? And everybody just tells a notion like it is, and that is because of some expectations that they have. Their expectation coming into the season is Ole Miss football cannot be talented. So their takes are built around Ole Miss not being talented. Why is all this working? Why is everything working? Well, it all goes back to Ole Miss can't be talented, so what is it? As soon as you can go and look and talk and realize that this Ole Miss football team is the most talented football team in my lifetime, kind of makes the season make sense. It makes those comebacks make sense because in the fourth quarter, Ole Miss was finally doing to teams what they have done to Ole Miss for years. And the talent just kind of took over. The front four for Ole Miss football, they're not great. They're good, though. Linebackers, not great, good. They're well coached. There's some schematic stuff. Offensively, those guys are just a bunch of freaking beasts, and they know it. But you can see how this goes. But you're going to hear many stories about this year. It's like, I can't believe they won 10 games as bad as of a team they are. And that is not the case. That is because their narrative before the season is Ole Miss can't be good. Ole Miss can't be talented. Yeah. So why is this happening?
That's like Dan Woken on Twitter. I can't stand that guy, but he put a not so good Ole Miss team, and it's like, dude, you know, we won 6 SEC games.
We lost at Georgia and at Alabama. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Period.
Not at all. Not at all. You know, and unlike Missouri, we beat LSU at home. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's the style points right there. We only lost to Georgia by 9. Whoop-de-doo. A loss is a loss. A win is a win.
You know, Missouri's probably third. Let's say Missouri's third or fourth best win will be if they defeat Arkansas today. That is how porous Missouri's schedule has been this season.
Exactly.
Absolutely nuts type stuff. What are your other thoughts on this game? I think this Egg Bowl next year is not going to be on Thanksgiving. I don't know the contract. I just think that ESPN is going to want Texas and Texas A&M to be the Thanksgiving game. Maybe ABC, since now the CBS situation is not around. The scheduling might look a little bit differently next year. But I do think Ole Miss and State, it might end up as a Friday type game. Maybe a Friday primetime type game. I think that could actually be something to look at.
Oh, I think it will be. I hate to say it, but it all depends on who State gets as a head coach probably, and how good they are will depend on, probably our time slot. But, everything I'm hearing now is it's Lebby, which that would be absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. And everybody's going to talk about it. It's like, would Jeff Lebby take it? Yes, Jeff Lebby would take it. He has way too much of that Art Briles stink for him to say no to anybody.
Exactly.
And, I'm sure they're going to do whatever, but you shouldn't be like overly concerned about Jeff Lebby and what he can do. He might fit very well in Starkville and do things like that. But honestly, you shouldn't worry overly about dealing with Jeff Lebby. I mean, he's a good coach, but if he was a really, really good coach, like a top shelf offensive coordinator and all of that, he'd be a head coach by now, period.
Exactly. And like you said, he's got a lot of baggage. He's got the whole Briles Baylor fiasco stink on him. And he married into that family. So that's never going to,
his father-in-law,
it's never going to leave him. So, but don't, like you said, nobody needs to even be concerned with that. We are so far ahead of State, and we're pulling away. We're recruiting well. We've got good coaches. We've got a defense and an offense now. We're going to have good special teams next year.
A punt team. Fraser Mason, by the way, I need to give him a shout out. I missed that on the show last night. He did a fantastic job punting the football.
Yes, he
against
did.
Mississippi State.
Yes, he did. And we brought Costa in and let him kick. Mm-hmm. And Costa hasn't played a lot this year, so he'll be a sophomore again next year. He played his freshman year and then he sat out, or at least I think he'll be a sophomore again next year because he didn't play that much. And or last year may have counted as a red shirt. I don't know. But Costa, had that kick last night, and Davis was kicking them off in the end zone. I know Davis's career's over at Ole Miss, but we're in good shape. We're in a lot better shape than I think some people may realize. You and I have talked about 24s was the year anyway. And, we've got Suntarian Perkins is going to get better, and we've got some dudes coming in on the defensive line. And we're going to be all right, man. We're going to be all right. The thing I like is we've got a defensive coordinator that's a recruitaholic, and he's a good schematic guy too. So, one man's, like I told one of my Alabama buddies, I said, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I love the guy. I hope we keep him for a long time.
After the Egg Bowl, they're getting ready to do their basically rap album cover shot that they take with the Egg Bowl. They kind of that Matt Corral shot with the hoodie up and all that. They were trying to recreate that after the Egg Bowl last night with Jaxson Dart and a bunch of those. And in the background, they're taking it. It's like Lane Kiffin and Knox and Jaxson Dart and Jordan Watkins and Dayton Wade and those guys. And then you look in the background, and on the phone, obviously already recruiting what's going on, is Pete Golding. That is the reason Ole Miss is having the success that they are having, is his recruiting. And pretty fantastic stuff. I'm excited. What thoughts from the Egg Bowl? And specifically, if you want to talk about it, we can. Ole Miss in that 2024 playoff, they're going to be a major factor. They're going to be in the conversation. If Ole Miss wins the bowl game, they're going to be 6th or 7th in the country come 2024. If they lose the bowl game, they're going to be 13th. Either way, if they just win games, they're going to go.
Right.
But I love the fact that we're in the conversation. But what are you looking forward in this journey?
Oh, goodness. I really want to see us improve. I want to see our defense get better. I want to see our offense get more consistent. And I would love nothing more than to see us in the first 12-team playoff. I think we've got a really good shot. I've always put that disclaimer in, barring injuries. But we've had some injuries this year, and we were able to overcome them.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, if they did not have injuries this year, that Alabama game might look different.
It would have. I mean, you look back at who we had not playing in that Alabama game. Trey Harris and some more folks. It may have been different. It may have been different.
Would not have been different in Georgia that night.
Those guys, man.
Yeah, I might take the Georgia Bulldogs that night against the Atlanta Falcons right now. Those guys got it going on pretty well.
It was like we were playing an NFL team. It really was. They had their way with us.
All right. So what games are we paying attention to this weekend? Everybody watch this game. Like I said, we're recording this when Missouri and Arkansas is on. So obviously the result of that game is going to matter for Ole Miss fans. But the other games that are going on as well, I think the teams that Missouri has wins against that they play, like Kansas State and Tennessee, you need to root against them. Penn State one as well. You either Ohio State or Michigan's about to take a loss.
Exactly.
So that's going to affect their ranking. And Louisville, obviously, you have the Kentucky thing where they have a chance to have two unranked losses and be ranked ahead of Ole Miss.
Yes.
Absolutely ridiculous. But there's a lot of games that really Ole Miss fans should pay attention to, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those. My big ones are, of course, number one is Arkansas and Missouri. I'm hoping that them keeping Pittman gets them fired up, and they're at home, and I hope they pull off the huge upset and beat Missouri. I'm hopeful that Kentucky can beat Louisville. I want Florida to beat Florida State. I just do.
That would be funny.
I think if Florida State loses a couple of times, that'll be good for us because they don't have their big quarterback anymore. Yeah. So that'll be interesting. And those are the main ones this weekend. I think those are the ones that can help us the most.
Well, the portal opens up in roughly about a week and a half at this point. The transfer portal actually opens up for 45 days. Schools like A&M and Mississippi State, you can already go in there. Will Rogers is either about to or is going into the transfer portal. Jake Wimberly told me whenever we did the Know Your Enemy that this was likely Will Rogers' last game. He's going to end up playing really well for somebody in the air raid. Honestly, he's a guy that could go to Southern Miss and be all conference.
Yeah, he is, and his brother plays down there, so I think that would be a wonderful thing if that happened. I think Southern may get a few more Mississippi State players. As things break open, I think the new coach that comes in at State is going to try and replicate what Sanders did as far as transfers at Colorado, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it. I don't think they've got the money to do that, but we'll see. But yeah, I like Will Rogers. He grew up an Ole Miss fan. Mm-hmm. I wish him the best. And but what I want to see us get out of the portal is big uglies on both sides of the ball. It's hard to find an offensive lineman in the portal, but we need to try. and I saw this big 6'9" behemoth from Yale that put himself in the portal. We may not have a chance at him, or we may not even want him, but a kid that can go to Yale and is a big kid, you can't teach size, and he's got to be smart. So I think Kiffin will do the money ball thing again. I think that's been positive for us. I think you'll see maybe one or two big names that he'll try to get. But for the most part, I think it'll be the money ball philosophy again. I just want to see us get some defensive line depth because we're going to lose some good pieces on the defensive line and some offensive line help as well. We're going to lose some offensive linemen as well.
I'm just glad that this season went the way it did so people can kind of start eating their crow in regards to roster building, because ever since Kansas State was a big deal back in the 90s with Michael Bishop, when they built their teams off of junior college recruiting, everybody's like, well, you can't do that. You have to do it a certain way. That's not how you do it. And the transfer portal, you hear the same thing. You can't build through the portal. You can't. That's a fool's errand of how to do it. Now they're like, well, okay, maybe I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. And maybe if you have a quarterback that's established, that is the true leader of your team, it doesn't matter where the players come from. And
Right.
if you do that, all of a sudden you have this team, because college football has become transactional anyway. It's not a lifelong relationship for college players. It's becoming transactional. So
It is, and it was semi-transactional before, but now with NIL and the portal, it's basically the minor leagues. I mean, and you can get an education, but there's still, there's a lot of people, just like Coach Kiffin said, some people, the loyalty's not to the team anymore.
mm-hmm.
The loyalties to how much money they can make and all that stuff. So I think that's another reason. I mean, you think about this defense we had this year, and then you think about it without Walton, and you think about it without Sanders, and you think about it without Pegues and some of those other Tennyson and some of those other transfers, and it's just a different defense. But I got to give a shout out. Last night was his last game, and he did exactly what he's done his whole career at Ole Miss. As Shawnee says, strong. That's one Lane Kiffin said he loved about him. He don't talk no smack. He just goes in and quietly does his job. He's always the highest graded linebacker on the team for the past few years. He just goes in, puts his nose down, keeps his mouth shut, and makes plays. And he played really good last night in his last game. And I'm just so proud of the kid. He's a good kid.
Yeah, you're going to hear about roster building, and roster building is absolutely about to happen with the portal about to come open. But there's 3 players that Ole Miss fans need to remember, because for various reasons, they either did not play much or not at all. And that is Chris Graves, who by the Georgia game was starting. He's going to probably be one of the dudes at corner for 2024. TJ Dudley, who is out there. I saw him in the number 20 jersey. He didn't get a waiver to play this year. He's going to be able to play, though, next year, because he has the year sit out thing. He'll be good to go.
Exactly.
And then you have either Jalen or Jaden Kennedy, the player that transferred from Tulane, had a bad knee injury that was kind of a slow recovery back. He played a little bit, but I'm sure he's going to keep his red shirt as well, and he'll be ready to go. He's a past all-conference player for Tulane, like defensive player of the year, I think, or something like that in the American Conference. So Kennedy is a really, really good football player as well. So whenever people start talking about what we're going to do on defense, remember those 3 pieces, they've already been recruited and built for this roster in 2024.
That is correct. And I mean, don't be surprised if you don't see Watkins back, Dart back. There's an outside shot that Trey Harris may come back. I think it would do Trey some good to come back. And
definitely do me some good.
Yeah. I'm a little selfish, but that's that whole COVID year thing. I know it's just about made it cycle through, but it'd be nice to see some of those kids come back next year.
Hey, if we make the playoff next year, can we just admit that the COVID year was the best thing that has ever happened to Ole Miss athletics? Because you're going to get a national championship in baseball, and then in football, you make the college football playoff. If that happens, I mean, that's pretty heavy waters for an Ole Miss program that has been, let's say, middling for the better part of the last 30 years.
I completely agree. It's a great time to be a Rebel.
Absolutely. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Tom Vanderford joined us for his weekly segment. We reacted to the Egg Bowl and just kind of talked football for a little bit. I am going to take the rest of the weekend off. There's not going to be any videos on Saturday, not going to be any videos on Sunday. Monday, we're going to kick back and get ready for some roster building. We're going to talk about some basketball and all of that stuff as well. Should be pretty fun. Anyway, Tom, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and I hope this weekend continues to go great, man.
It's awesome. Life is well. I'm blessed. Hotty toddy, everybody.
Hotty toddy.